Okay.
So here we are, the Cornibara team with Paul Pontallier, Chateau Margaux. He's the boss here, has been for a long time. If, Paul, you were asked to sum up the 2012 vintage very briefly, in just a few words, how would you sum it up in this picture?
I think the word heterogeneity is probably a key word to understand the vintage, which means that great terroirs have produced great wines. This is quite obvious. Be on the right bank of the river or on the left bank, be with Merlot or with Cabernet Sauvignon. The 12 let the terroir speak louder than many previous vintages when the climate had probably a more important part.
And you were talking earlier about comparisons. Are there any comparisons that could be made with this vintage with earlier ones, or is it too early?
Well, it's always a very difficult question, of course. It's inevitably we ask ourselves the question. It's hard to find any previous vintage which can compare with 12 because I think wines has somewhere changed so much since the last 10, 12 years that it's hard to go further down in the past. Climatically, it reminds me of vintages like 86 or 88, for example. We have the same kind of power of concentration, but the maturity is much better in 12 than it was then. With the same concentration of tannins, or even more in 12, the wines manage to be much softer, much more elegant, much purer. So if we look at the last vintages, I don't really find any other vintage stylistically than 10. Now, 12 hasn't got that depth and complexity which 10 has got. But stylistically, it's probably the closest vintage from 12, I think.
You were talking about the difficulties in the rain at the end of the growing season, robbing the vintage of potential greatness. Were there any other difficulties that you felt during the growing season, or was it something reasonably classic for you at Margaux?
I mean, nothing truly extraordinary, but certainly the most challenging part of the year was the spring, which was very wet, as I told you, and that very wet spring created extremely favorable conditions for downy mildew, and 12 is certainly one of the most difficult years regarding this, and I have to tell you something. It's precisely the year we picked to start, at least with the best plots, because it's much easier, to grow everything organic. So, which was both a good and a bad choice. It's a good choice because at least you can see when it's very difficult, if it works when it's very difficult, then it might work afterwards. At some point, I just thought that the risk was growing too high. So we made one chemical spray, but we just did one instead of 7, 8, or 9. We would have done in the past. So I consider that to be, and we didn't lose a single berry actually. So I consider this to be a great success. And from now onwards, Chateau Margaux, and the first wine, will be organic, and then probably in 4 or 5 years' time, I think we will need that. The second and third wine will also be organic.
I think few people would question the supreme quality of Margaux as a wine. But there are a lot of people out there, particularly in the UK, but actually I have to say around the world, that in the 2010 vintage and the 2011 vintage have questioned the way in which all of the grape growths responded to the market. 2010, I think, created a lot of unhappy customers. I think a lot of loyal traditional customers decided not to buy, despite the very high level of quality, because they suddenly realized that actually these prices had gone into levels that simply were unsustainable for drinking. which is what we want people to do more than anything else. How do you think Bordeaux needs to retain its loyal customers and create new ones in the atmosphere that exists currently because of 2010 and also to a large extent 2011?
No, it's a very good question, because of course all what we want to do is exactly what you said. We think our wines are meant, and we certainly make them for drinking, not just for tasting. We want to regain our loyal customers. We understand that some of them have had some difficulties in buying wines at the prices which the market had driven. Actually, the two last years have been quite difficult on the economical side, and certainly the market has changed a lot. So I think the most important thing we have to do is to make great wines. That's the first and foremost point. But also, I think we just have to adjust the price to the market, and we usually, that's what we always try to do. Sometimes we've proved right, sometimes we might have been proved wrong. Part of it must be our fault. Part of it is probably the uncertainties and of the market. So no doubt that that's exactly what we want. We want to make great wines and to sell them at such a price that consumers feel happy to buy them and drink them. So it has proved, and it's proved to be not just in the last 2 years, but it has always proved to be quite a challenge to find at the en-primeur level the right price. But that's what we will try to do, and we will obviously welcome all the suggestions and everything, just to try to find that good and fair level, which will make people happy to buy.
It's a good answer, and I think we all certainly need to listen to the market.
Yes, that certainly would.
A more delicate question. Chateau Latour.
That was a delicate one too.
Well, you handled it with such delicacy. That, how do you think the world will perceive Chateau Latour retreating from the en-primeur market? And is this something that Chateau Margaux is
No, it's not a delicate question at all. I think that Chateau Latour has certainly not done that just because it was their last good idea. They have certainly thoroughly thought about it, and because they not only make great wines, but they are also very competent people. So, which is why we are interested in looking at their experience. We are certainly not interested in following suit in the foreseeable future. That's for sure, because I think that the en-primeur market, as long as quality and price are fair, is extremely interesting. I think the fact that for wines like ours and a few others, maybe not for hundreds of wines, but for the greatest wines, it is, and it should be, a great opportunity for the consumer to find and buy at a fair price the wines which they love. So, and I think that on the long term, it serves our image, it creates loyalty. So honestly, we think that it might not be such a great idea, but we will look at it extremely seriously and once again just look at the results of our friend from Chateau.
And finally, which is a very difficult question to ask one of the lords of the left bank, would you say that early indications suggest it is a left bank vintage or a right bank vintage?
It's a Grand Terroir vintage, which means that the left bank, the right bank, which is mostly planted with Merlot. But the few Cabernet Franc I have tasted on the best terroir of the right bank proved to be extremely good too. And on our side, all the best terroirs are planted with Cabernet Sauvignon. So, I mean, the few wines I have tasted so far have really shown me exactly that it's a year for the greatest terroir. And then, when you go down the classification, of course, and then the level of the terroir, it's probably there, the Merlot year. Because on lesser terroir, I don't think the Cabernet Sauvignon has reached a fantastic level of maturity. So for most of Bordeaux, it will probably be the Merlot year, but not for the greatest terroir. And here, for example, our Cabernet Sauvignon are, as usual, much better than our Merlot because it's a Cabernet Sauvignon place.
Good. Paul Pontallier, Chef Margaux, thank you very much.